saying that we're going to be starting to talk about what people probably already know, more personally about yourself in your zodiac. You might not know as much about other people's zodiacs. So I'm sure if you don't know every zodiac, you can at least name a few, even if you don't know yourself. So they go in order of element, starting with fire, and then we've got an earth sign next, and then we get air and then water. So going around the zodiac wheel, if we're looking up at the sky at the constellations, we've got Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and then we have Leo, Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio. And then we've got Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So that is the typical order that astrology likes to go in for zodiac, because that is, you know, as you travel across the sky in the transital plane, that is the order that they follow. So when we're talking about transits is how everything moves across this bigger picture. We're going to talk more about that later, so don't get too worried if that seems a little confusing right now. So the next thing is that people know their sun sign. Typically, you call it your star sign, but a lot of people don't really know anything further than that. Like, some people might have heard about a moon or ascendant sign, your rising sign, but not a lot of people know what theirs is or what that means. So what an ascendant sign is, I'm going to start with that one because it's, you know, a little bit more before anything else. Your ascendant sign is whatever zodiac constellation was rising above the horizon at the moment in time which you were born. So that's why it's called your rising sign, your ascendant. After that, we've got your moon sign. Your moon sign is where the moon was, what constellation energy it was in at that moment in time as well. So what we have with astrology here, when we're talking about natal astrology, there's many different kinds, is there's this little diagram here. We have a bunch of different wheels. Each section here is separated into 12 even pieces. This represents not only the zodiacs themselves, but each different house is what each section is called. I'm going to get a little bit more into that later. But the really main idea behind this is a chart of where the stars were at in the sky when you were born, where the planets were at, where the sun was at as well. So there's many different websites that you can go to. It's very easy to get a casting of your own birth chart. I definitely suggest exploring that if it's something that you're interested in. A quick Google search of birth chart casting will pull up many resources that you can use to do so. After that, we've got planets. So how the planets play a role in your chart and in your life and in your day-to-day is very important. Obviously, when we're talking about astrology, a lot of people know that the planets are involved, but they aren't quite sure how or exactly what they mean. So along with the planets, with the zodiacs, we're going to have all these different symbols that might seem a little foreign. Typically, you're going to recognize the symbol for your own zodiac, but you don't typically recognize symbols for other zodiacs. And then also for planets, they are a little more recognizable, like Mars being the, male symbol, Venus being the female typical. What these symbols are called in astrology is glyphs. So glyphs are just more of a universal language of how we can communicate in between. It's more of the energy of the thing. So it's a very universal language that is, translatable into any human language that we have created. Anywhere you have that symbol, it's going to mean the same thing. So I'm going to start off telling you a little bit more about the planets and what each of them mean, and explain a little bit about their glyph. So the very first one that's important to think about when you are looking at your natal astrology chart is going to be your sun. That is what zodiac you identify with. It is going to be symbolized by a circle with a dot in the middle. This is wanting you to look at your individuality, ego, and where your life path is projected to move in this life. After that, we have the moon. The moon is usually symbolized by a crescent moon glyph. This is talking about emotions and subconscious, what you feel and how you feel it. Next, okay, before I move on too far from there, actually, I do want to say in astrology, all of these things are called planets. The sun and the moon, it is recognized that they aren't planets. They are called luminaries because they are these bodies in the sky that seem to have their own light. Versus the planets, which we know it has a reflection from the sun that, Saturn isn't really the light that's glowing when you look up and see Saturn at night, or same with Mars. That's why it's, flavored with the color that it has based off its atmosphere and planetary composition. Okay, moving on from there, the very first planet we come to is going to be Mercury. And that's part of the inner planets, so the rocky planets, for those of you who are into astronomy. This is going to be an inner planet. Mercury is the closest to the sun. It is similar to the sign for Venus, but then you've got this little swoop up above it. Mercury is the planet of communications. It is the planet of the mind. It is the planet of how you think and how you express from that into your dialogue. After Mercury, we've got Venus, which I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with that symbol. It's going to be that circle with a plus underneath. Venus is the planet of affection. It's the planet of beauty and love and all things pleasing, what you find aesthetically pleasing. Okay. The next planet after that, as we are moving across the orbital plane, is going to be Mars. Mars is that one that's a circle with an arrow pointing up to the right. Mars is going to talk about energy or temperament and power. Mars is a planet of ambition and how you go after what you are passionate about. Okay, so that is going to be all of the inner planets. Next, we start getting to the outer planets. This is going to be, the first one is Jupiter. Jupiter, it looks like a stylized number 4. It's got a curve to it. Jupiter is known as the planet of abundance, expansion, and fortune. It is the planet of luck. It's also talking about your health and wealth. Those kind of go hand in hand. So whether you have an abundance of good health or an abundance of bad health, that's where you want to look to Jupiter. All right, the next planet that we come to is going to be Saturn. Saturn is what looks like a reaper or a scythe. So the handle, what you use, when you're thinking about gathering wheat. It's like that curved, hooked knife kind of thing. Saturn is the Reaper planet. Saturn is the planet of structure. It is the planet of lessons. It's the planet of barriers. And it's also about karmics. So how you pay for what you put out, the consequences of what you do, you get, you reap what you sow. Okay. The next planet is going to be Uranus, however you want to say it. This one is, so if you know the symbol for Pisces, I want you to think about that. It's those two, back to back curves with a line between them. Well, then you add another line down with a circle. I've heard it likened to be like a TV antenna. It doesn't really come across that way to me. It looks more like it's just a very interesting symbol. It has a different perspective. Uranus is the planet of perspective, breakthroughs, but also chaos. So this is the planet of where you take a new look at things and where you get a new insight on the look that you have at those things. The next planet that we have is Neptune. Neptune is going to be the one that is represented by this trident looking symbol. It's going to have 3 prongs with a plus beneath it, as if it's like, the handle that the Neptune's trident is held by. Neptune is the planet of inspiration, enlightenment, and mysticism. So where you have those bolts of inspiration from the blue, that's going to be Neptune. Okay, the next planet that we have as we are transversing the planetary plane is going to be Pluto. Pluto is that one. It has 2 glyphs, as a matter of fact, actually. The first one is for, of course, I can't remember his name right now, be the person who discovered Pluto. His name has P in the first name and L in the last name, so we get a P and an L combined together as the first glyph for Pluto. The second one is going to look like a crucible, so it's going to be like you've got a half circle with a plus under it that has an orb levitating within that area above. Pluto is the planet of transformation, life and death, birth, rebirth cycles. This is really that planet where you are paving the way, where you are getting rid of any negativities or, letting go of things and bringing new things in. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information. All of these planets have their own very important role in what they play in your life. So if you take, let's look at Pluto. Anywhere in your life where you have this idea about something that suddenly you see a new change, so you get that spark of inspiration from Neptune, and it starts transforming into this, okay, aha, your understanding, and you start moving forward into this new cycle. That's going to be your Pluto energy. That's where you're being affected by those energies. So that goes very hand in hand with the next thing we're going to talk about, which is houses. So if we go back to this chart that I showed you guys of the natal astrology casting, you're going to see each section has its own number. So these are the houses. So the numbers here with each house, I'm going to start and just go all the way around and give you a brief little explanation of what they each mean. If we are just looking at a blank representation that just has those energies with them, it's going to start with Aries being assigned to house 1. But when it is your own personal birth chart, that's going to change because, like I was talking about before, your ascendant sign is going to be that sign that was rising in the sky at the moment in time you were born. That is your first house. So the first house for your natal astrology is determined by what sign is rising. So the first house is going to be your self-identity, how you come across to people, and what you seem like, your emotional areas of what you express to people. So that's going to be your first house. Second house is going to be values, what you value and how you value yourself. But it's also about possessions, cash, property, what material things that you have in this world and what materialistic ideas that you have. So after this house 2, we come to house 3. This is going to be the planet of communications. It's also talking about how you learn early on in your childhood, your early development. And it's also about siblings and those kind of interactions that you have. So these first 3 planets, or first 3 houses, these are going to be the more personal planets. And as we move forward to the next 3, this is where it starts to expand a little bit more into your world. So as we move into house 4, this is going to be the house of family and home. It's about anything domestic, all of those things where you see that ideal of like your perfect sanctuary kind of thing. That's house 4. The next house is house 5. So this goes right along with house 4, but it's a little more geared toward personal life because it is the house of romance and love pursuits. So this isn't about how you are in a relationship, but how you go after a relationship. It's about how you flirt, how you express your sensual side. Okay. Next, after the 5th house, we've got the 6th house. This is the house of daily routines. This is where we start expanding more into that next section of 3 houses. They are called orbs. I'm not going to get into that right now because that's just going to confuse it all. But that's just a little bit of terminology so you can see the separation. So the last house in this second orb, house number 6, daily routine. So it's not only about, okay, well, I get up and the first thing I do is this. That's really, it is a lot about that, but it's also about your work routines and your health routines, hygiene, relationship routines, you know, how you tend to be in a specific, you know, area of your life when you're talking to friends. What routines you have around those, what patterns, behaviors you build. All right. So next, after the 6th house, we come to the 7th house. This is expanding out a little more into your world. This is the house of partners, any kind of partners at all. So it's going to be work partners, business partners, friends, even. Any kind of relationship. So this is a little bit deeper than the 5th house where we're talking about how you flirt. This is a little bit more of how you are in that relationship, not how you chase it. So that is the 7th house. After that, the 8th house is the house of transformation. Anything that you consider to be taboo or you wouldn't just talk about with anyone. It's the house about sex and just passions, but those like kind of hush hush things that you're like, okay, everyone doesn't need to know that, but this is a little closer to everyone because it's about how you transform into your acceptance of that with everyone else. Okay, the next house that we have is going to be the 9th house. And this is going to be getting a lot more closer to moving out into the world away from you. This is going to be the house of study and travel, the great cosmic quest, where you are soul searching, where you are like trying to find what is out there for you, you know, the purpose and meaning to your life. This is the house that talks about religion, not how you pick religion or how you act in religion, but the kind of religion that you are going to be more drawn towards. And your ideas around those and how you view other people based off of those types of beliefs. Okay, so next we're moving further out into the world as we move into the last 3 houses. The next house is going to be the 10th house. This is talking about career, ambition, and your legacy, how you leave your mark on the world, how you make a lasting change that is seen for generations to come. That's going to be your 10th house. So next, after the 10th house, we come to the 11th house. This is going to be the house of social circles, of friends, hopes and wishes, things that you dream to aspire to. All of those, you know, kind of happy, mushy thoughts that you have that you're like, oh, you know, how lovely, and how you interact with the parts of the world that you see being affected by those ideals. Okay, next after the 11th house, we come to the 12th house, the last house on the zodiac wheel. This is going to be that deep, dark secret. So we're going really far out there. So far out there, we've left humanity behind. This is talking about your fears, your self-undoing, and your spirituality. So this goes kind of back to that 9th house where we are talking about religion. But this is about how you seek that spiritual nourishment and how you find out, you know, what type of spirituality can you flow with to go back to the 9th house and pick that religion. Okay. This is also the house that is, you know, the pitfalls in a way, where you have a chance to make yourself stumble before you keep going on. This is that house where you can have underlying things, because it's right next to the first house as well, because we're not talking about a line here, it's a circle. So we've got a very deep connection to that first house of your self-identity and your emotions, how you come across to the world. This is going to be that part where you have things deeper in mind, but maybe you don't really know or see it all the time. Okay, so now that we've gone over the houses and we have established that there's 12 of them, and we also know there's 12 zodiacs, and each zodiac falls on what is known as the cusp of a house. The cusp is going to be that line in the chart that is the first degree of those 30 degrees within the house. So each house is measured by degrees, but it also goes by minutes. So as you are looking at your chart, if you have a natal astrology chart for yourself, you will see that it has a degree next to planets, but then it also has multiple numbers, and it goes between 0 and 59. So that's going to be the minutes within the amount of time as we move through the day. So thinking there's 24 hours in the day, there's 12 and 12 hours if you split the day in half. So each house you can think of kind of representing 2 hours, condense that down into 1. This is going to be where the relation of these zodiacs comes into play. Whatever zodiac is sitting on the cusp of each house is going to flavor that house and that area of life with its characteristics. So that's how we can start to see, okay, well, I knew this person who they were a Cancer, but then they were also very similar to somebody else that I knew that it was an Aquarius, right? That's where that flow comes in. That's where that balance back and forth comes in, is when you have all the different zodiacs in you and you start to see where they each lie in what parts of your chart, in what parts of your life. So as you start looking at that deeper and you start seeing, okay, well, I can see now how, you know, my Libra might be affecting my home and family life if I have Libra on the cusp of the 4th house. That's why I have more of a balanced sense of what I want to be domestic and how I go about making those things. So the next step of adding this all together is going to be looking at what house each planet lies in. So if you have, for example, Venus in the 5th house, then you're going to have a lot of ease in how you flirt. You're going to come across as very flirty. You know, these are the people that seem very lovey-dovey, possibly, and very warm and open, is when you have your Venus in the 5th house, especially if you've got a sign like Virgo on the 5th house. Virgo is a lot about, you know, those aesthetics, those pleasing aspects in life. So the next part of those planets is there's going to be that circle in the middle that seems blank. That's going to be where lines are drawn between all the planets in each different house, and this is where degrees come into play. So the degrees are the angles that the planets make with each other. So we go by, typically they're going to be whole numbers, like 30 degrees. There's 30 degrees in each house. When you've got a planet and another planet in a house right next to it within a set amount of degrees from 30, that is going to be a trine. This is known as a harmonizing aspect. This is where you have those energies of those planets blending together to lend each other a hand and make it flow a little bit better. The next type of degree I'm going to talk about is going to be squares. This is where you have 90 degrees. So there's going to be 3 houses in between these 2 planets, and they are close to the same degree within their respective house. A square is considered a chaotic angle. This is where things start to clash. This is where it starts to give a rebuff to each other, where those energies don't really mix. throw each other off. There's going to be chaos or potential lessons that need to be learned in those areas. It's going to say that if you look deeper at this, this is where you might think you're just having troubles and you're cursed, but it's because there's something there a little deeper that you need to explore within yourself. You aren't cursed if you have a lot of chaotic angles in your chart. It just means you're going to learn a lot in this life and you're going to make a lot of breakthroughs and move forward. I would honestly consider it a little more cool to have more chaotic angles in a birth chart than it would be to have all easy angles, because, you know, just an easy life, you're going to float through life. Well, no one has an easier or harder chart than anyone else. Let's be honest. Everyone has, you know, all their own trials throughout their own life, their own good days, their own bad days. And it's, you know, we've all got our own lessons to learn. So the very last thing that I want to touch on before we wrap up this first session and start getting to any questions is nodes. Nodes of the moon are going to be symbolized by this horseshoe looking glyph on the chart, and they're going to be directly across from each other wherever they fall. So you're going to have your north node is going to be an upright horseshoe, and the south node is going to be an upside down horseshoe. The north node, that is where you need to step out of your comfort zone. That is what you came into this life in a greater purpose to learn, that you have deeper work to do on as you move forward. So that's going to, whatever house your north node falls in and whatever sign is in that planet is going to really give you a very deep insight, where if you start putting that work in, if you start letting those ideas around it go that you've just created out of maybe a fear or a resistance, that's going to show you where you can really make a lot of progress, where you can flourish. The other part is your south node. Your south node is your comfort zone. So that is where you really feel at home. That is where you've got everything down. That's where, if you know you're putting all your energy into that, things are going to be just fine. But if we get stuck in our south node, that's when we notice a lot of stagnation. That's when things stop progressing, stop moving forward, and we start possibly creating friction for ourselves. And so the south node is really what you want to step out of. You can use that as a tool to, you know, build yourself up. You can be like, okay, you know, look, I've got all this strength in this area. How can I then take and, you know, transferable skills? How can I reflect that into this opposing force that is trying to get me out of my comfort zone, that's trying to push me forward? All right, my lovelies. That, I know that's probably a lot of information. I hope there was some new stuff in there that you did not know about astrology before. And at this time, I would like to open it up to questions. If there's anything that maybe seems like I didn't explain very well, or you're a little confused, or if it brings up a new, you know, inspiration into your mind, any Uranus moments that are trying to come in, go ahead and drop those in the comments below, and I will be here for you guys to answer those as we move forward. All right, so right now that I see we have no viewers, I'm going to just go ahead and end the video, because it'd be kind of silly me waiting here for you guys to answer and no one's with me. So please, as you are viewing this video further on in time from this moment of the broadcast, please think of those things that you have questions about, that you are confused about, that might not have been so clear, and put that in the comments section below so that I can get back to you guys and help you understand a little bit more. All right, my lovelies, I hope you are all doing awesome, and I will see you guys tomorrow for a little clarification session, and we're going to do a little tarot live as well. All right, you guys take care and have an awesome day.